Can police track your car without a warrant? Well, you probably don't expect a whole lot of privacy, you know, when you're driving around because your license plate is, in public view and down a public road, and you got the visible plate. You've got anyone that's standing nearby can, basically see it. Now, some folks get upset if people take photographs of their license plates and stuff, but we've got scenarios now where we have cameras that are set up across cities and counties, and well, in even across the country now, and it records your license plate every time you drive past the camera. So then what happens if the information is stored and it's put into a searchable database, it's shared, and then it's used later to actually map where your car has been? So that's the civics question behind this. It's like, flock cameras, other automated license plates readers, what is the expectation of privacy? Because these cameras don't just see a license plate. They actually capture the plate number, the timestamp, the location, a vehicle description, and sometimes, even other identifying features like maybe the driver. Now, supporters for these cameras argue that it helps police find stolen cars, locate wanted suspects, help solve crimes, and help law enforcement report quickly to different kinds of alerts that take place. But that's an important public safety argument as to their importance. But there are also privacy concerns that exist here as well, because the Fourth Amendment protects people against unreasonable searches and seizures. And traditionally, courts have said that you have a lower expectation of privacy when you're exposed to, the public view, if you have things out in the public view. So that's why, for example, when a police officer sees your license plate on a public street, that's usually not treated as an invasive search. But modern surveillance is really kind of changing the scale of how all this happens. One officer who happens to see a license plate is different from hundreds or thousands of cameras that are building a searchable record or a database of everybody's movements. And that distinction is what is important here. So if we look back at some court cases, like in the United States v. Jones, the Supreme Court dealt with GPS tracking on a vehicle. In Carpenter v. United States, the Supreme Court said that the government's access to historical cell phone location data was a Fourth Amendment search, so therefore a warrant would be needed. And then recently here we had the Chattree case, where the Supreme Court recognized that digital location data can really raise serious Fourth Amendment concerns. Now, none of those cases really answers every question about license plate readers, though, but they do point to the same issue here when it comes to civics. Technology can turn public movements into long-term surveillance, and that's why flock cameras are so controversial right now. Some communities are, holding hearings. You have civil liberties groups that are arguing that these systems can become effectively just mass surveillance, especially when data is shared widely between agencies. We've had a couple instances over the weekend where police officers were using the data to track ex-girlfriends or just for their own personal use. Now, the company Flock says its default data retention period is usually 30 days, and it will delete after 30 days, and that the data is only meant for public safety purposes. But even 30 days of searchable database location history can tell a lot about an individual, a person's life, like where they worship, where they work, where do they go visit, whether they attended a protest, a medical appointment, a political meeting, or just a support group. So the question isn't simply, can police use technology? Because of course they can. The better question is, what rules should exist before government builds a searchable map of everybody's movements? So, it comes down to, should police need a warrant then to search historical license plate data? How long should that data be kept? Who has access to the data? Can it be shared with outside agencies? Is there a federal and a state component here, a local component? that goes along here with where the information can be saved. This is where really being tuned into civics is important, because public safety is important, privacy is important. And the Fourth Amendment was written to force government power to justify its actions before it intrudes too far. So, can police track your car without a warrant? They can usually see your license plate in public, but using technology to collect and to store and to search your movements over time raises a much bigger constitutional question. So, as citizens, as people who live in a constitutional republic, we have to ask not only whether surveillance is necessary and works, it also has to ask who controls it, right? Who watches the watchers is what it comes down to. And what privacy really means when public life is recorded everywhere. We've seen, I believe the LAPD is actually considering suspending their contract with Flock because of concerns of breaches of privacy for individuals, innocent until proven guilty kind of things. So anyway, I thought this was an interesting topic, and I'm sure it'll come up in my classroom this fall. Thanks for watching.